Hello and welcome back to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and boy am I excited for this deep dive today. We've got Sarah, our language expert, here with us, and we're tackling something everybody loves: food.
Yeah, it's going to be a tasty one for sure.
And listen, we're not just talking like basic food words, pizza, pasta.
Yeah.
We're going way beyond that today. We're figuring out how to handle those tricky restaurant situations, how to really express what you think about food, and even how food ties into culture and tech. Sarah, where do we even start with all this?
Well, let's picture yourself at a restaurant, right, ready to order. Now, the language you use can totally change depending on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Are you by yourself just grabbing a quick bite, or out with friends for a casual lunch, or maybe it's a fancy dinner? Each scenario needs a different level of, formality.
I can see that.
Yeah.
For sure. I know I'm way more likely to just fire off my order if I'm alone.
Yeah.
But with friends, you end up talking about the specials, maybe ask for recommendations, or even got to deal with dietary stuff.
Exactly. And even those simple things like asking about the specials or getting the check, it can feel so much smoother when you've got the right phrases ready. Imagine you're in a busy Parisian bistro and want to know what the chef suggests. Instead of just saying, "What's good?" you could be like, "Excuse me, could you tell me a bit about the chef's special this evening?" Adds a touch of class, don't you think? Shows you're comfortable with the language.
Oh yeah, way more polished. I always feel a little weird having to explain dietary restrictions, especially in another language. Any advice on doing that smoothly?
Being prepared with key phrases can make all the difference. You could say, "I'm trying to avoid gluten," or "I have a shellfish allergy." Being upfront and polite makes the whole dining experience better for everyone.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so we've ordered. Now, how do we describe the food beyond just delicious?
Now this is where it gets fun. English has so many awesome adjectives that are way more descriptive than just tasty or yummy. I mean, think about mouth-watering, flavorful, aromatic, even scrumptious. You can seriously paint a picture with your words and make people feel that sensory experience of the dish.
I love that, painting a picture with words. But what about when the food isn't what you hoped for? How do you give feedback without being rude? Those times when the steak's overcooked or the soup's bland.
That's where being diplomatic comes in. Instead of, "This is awful," try something like, "It's a bit overdone for my liking," or "It could use a touch more seasoning." Focusing on specific parts of the dish instead of just making a general judgment is key.
It's like walking a tightrope between being honest and polite.
You got it. And if you can throw in a positive comment with the critique, it softens things. For example, "The presentation is lovely, but the flavors are a bit muddled for my taste."
Great tip. I've totally been there trying to figure out how to say what I think about the food politely. So we've covered ordering, describing food, even giving feedback. What other language challenges pop up when you're dining in English?
Don't forget dietary needs and preferences. The world of food is getting more and more diverse, and being able to clearly say what you need is crucial.
True, these days there are just so many different diets and eating styles: vegetarian, vegan, flexitarian, keto, paleo, on and on.
Exactly. And knowing how to say what you prefer confidently means you'll have a good and enjoyable time, especially if you're traveling or in a new place.
It's like having this whole toolkit of words for all things food. Super helpful when you're traveling or trying new cuisines. Speaking of new cuisines, I've always found it cool how food and culture are so connected. It's not just about eating to survive. It shows history, traditions, values.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Food is a real window into a culture's soul. Think about those fancy Japanese tea ceremonies, or a Moroccan tagine where everyone shares. It's way more than just the food itself.
I remember being in Japan, totally blown away by the rituals around just a cup of tea. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen.
Exactly. It's the whole thing, the look, the meaning, the social part. Food becomes art, a way to show cultural identity.
And sometimes those cultural differences can lead to some, funny or even awkward moments.
Yeah.
Especially with table manners.
Oh, for sure. I had a friend visit China once, and he accidentally did something really bad, stuck his chopsticks straight up in a bowl of rice. It's like a symbol of death in Chinese culture.
Whoa, I had no idea. See, this is why these conversations are so important. Not just about avoiding awkwardness, but understanding and appreciating other cultures better.
Couldn't agree more. Learning about different food customs, it makes traveling so much richer. And it can even help you connect with people from different backgrounds right here at home.
It's like building bridges with food, one bite at a time. But we can't forget how technology is changing things too. How we cook, eat, even think about food.
No doubt, technology is totally changing the food scene. From online recipes and delivery apps to social media trends and all these personalized nutrition apps, it's a whole new world.
I'll admit I kind of love those recipe videos online.
Yeah.
They make cooking seem so easy, even for someone like me who's not a chef.
Right. They're a great resource.
Yeah.
And they show you all these cuisines and techniques you might never have tried otherwise.
Speaking of resources, we got to look at some sample answers from that IELTS mentor thing, the one that helps people get ready for the IELTS exam. And it's really interesting how they talked about food and technology together so smoothly.
Those examples are perfect for showing how to use advanced vocabulary and connect food to bigger ideas. That's what the IELTS examiners are looking for.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't just saying what their favorite foods were. They were talking about how food delivery apps affect local restaurants, how social media creates food trends, even the ethics of genetically modified foods. Super interesting stuff.
It shows that you have to go beyond just naming dishes. You need to be able to say what you think about the cultural, social, even political sides of food.
So what's the main takeaway for someone who wants to improve their food English? Whether they're studying for an exam or just want to feel more confident in conversations?
I'd say go beyond the basics. Don't be afraid to use descriptive words, explore different food cultures, and really talk about the role of food in our lives.
Love that. It's not just learning words, it's about trying new things and connecting with the world through food.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Wow, this has been a really eye-opening conversation, Sarah. I feel like I've learned a ton. Not just about food words, but about how powerful food is. Like, it connects us across cultures, even across time.
I agree. It's pretty amazing how just talking about food can lead to so many interesting thoughts.
Before we finish up, I want to challenge our listeners to try out some of these language skills. Think about a dish that means something special to you. Maybe it's a family recipe, a childhood favorite, something you discovered while traveling. Now try to describe that dish. Use really vivid language that captures not just the taste, but also the memories and emotions you connect with it.
Oh, that's a fantastic challenge. I can't wait to hear what everyone comes up with.
Me neither. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of food and dining in English. A huge thank you to Sarah for being here and sharing your expertise. This conversation has been so engaging.
The pleasure was all mine, Mike.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on the Learn English Lab. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more language learning deep dives. We'll see you next time.
Until then, happy eating and even happier learning.
Hello, and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and we're going deep today into some vocabulary that's really important for talking about health and fitness in English.
It really is. If you're chatting with your friends about your workout routine,
Right.
or maybe even just trying to understand a health article, having a solid grasp of these words
For sure.
can really make all the difference.
I think so too. And to help us make sense of all these words, we've got Sarah joining us.
Hi.
She's great at taking complicated ideas and making them really clear.
Well, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay.
Yeah, let's jump right in.
Let's jump in. One of the first things I noticed was just how much emphasis there is on overall well-being
Yeah,
and not just physical health.
it's true. Well-being, it's such a holistic idea. It means not just your physical health, but your mental and emotional state too.
Okay.
So it's about feeling good in every part of your life.
That's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah.
How would you use that word, like in a casual conversation?
You could say something like, I've been focusing on my well-being lately by getting more sleep and eating healthier.
Okay.
Or, yoga really improves my sense of well-being. I always feel so much more relaxed and centered afterward.
Yeah, those are really good examples.
Yeah.
It seems like well-being is kind of this like wider term for taking care of yourself.
Exactly, and a lot of that comes down to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
The choices you make each day that add up to your overall health.
Okay, lifestyle. That's another one we hear all the time.
We do.
But what are some specific examples of how that connects to health and fitness?
Well, your lifestyle includes your diet, your exercise habits, your sleep patterns, even how you manage stress.
Right.
It's about those daily actions that really impact your well-being over time.
So it's not just about like going to the gym 3 times a week.
Right.
It's about building a whole way of life that supports good health.
Precisely. It's about making those choices that nourish your body and mind.
Okay, now that makes me think of another word I keep seeing, immunity.
Yes.
Everyone always talks about boosting their immunity.
Right.
But what does that actually mean?
So immunity is all about your body's ability to fight off infections and diseases.
Okay.
It's like having this powerful defense system that's protecting you from getting sick.
So when people talk about boosting their immunity, they're basically trying to strengthen that defense system.
You got it. And there are so many ways to do that, from eating nutritious foods to getting enough sleep and managing stress.
I've even heard that laughter can boost your immunity.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe we should all be watching more comedies.
I am all for that. Laughter's definitely good medicine.
Okay, so we've covered well-being, lifestyle, and immunity.
Yeah,
Those are some pretty strong foundations
Yeah.
for talking about health in English.
they are, and they all tie together beautifully.
Yeah,
Your lifestyle choices directly impact your well-being and your immunity.
right.
It's all interconnected.
I really like how you're making those connections for us.
Of course.
Now I'm ready to get into the specifics of fitness vocabulary.
Okay.
I'm seeing terms like warm up and cool down.
Yeah.
Those seem pretty basic.
Yeah.
But I bet some of our listeners are wondering about, like, the best ways to do them.
Oh, I bet you're right. These are essential parts of any workout.
Mhm.
A warm-up, it gets your body ready for exercise.
Right.
It gradually increases your heart rate and blood flow to your muscles.
Okay.
Think of it as gently waking up your body before you push it harder.
So you're not just jumping into some really difficult exercise.
Right.
You're easing into it.
Exactly. Light cardio, like jogging in place or jumping jacks,
Yeah.
some dynamic stretches.
Okay.
Those are great ways to warm up.
And what about cool down?
So cool down.
Is that just stretching?
It's about stretching, but it's also about gradually slowing down your heart rate and allowing your body to recover.
Got it.
Walking for a few minutes after a run
Okay.
or giving some gentle yoga poses can help prevent muscle soreness and promote relaxation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like you're letting your body unwind
Exactly.
after all that work.
And speaking of effort, let's talk about different types of exercise.
Okay.
One distinction that often comes up is aerobic versus anaerobic exercise.
Ooh, those sound a bit more technical.
Yeah, a little bit.
Could you explain those to us?
Of course, aerobic exercise involves sustained activity that gets your heart rate up and keeps it there for an extended period.
Okay.
Think running, swimming, or cycling.
Yeah.
These activities help improve your cardiovascular health and endurance.
So if I'm training for a marathon, I'd want to focus on aerobic exercise.
Absolutely. And how would you explain that to your running buddy in English?
I might say, hey, let's go for a long run today to build up our aerobic fitness for the marathon.
Perfect. Now, anaerobic exercise, on the other hand, involves short bursts of intense activity.
Okay.
Think sprinting or weightlifting.
Right.
These activities help build muscle mass and strength.
So if I'm trying to get toned muscles,
Uh-huh.
I should add in some anaerobic exercise to my routine.
Exactly. You could tell your gym buddy, I'm going to hit the weights today for some anaerobic training.
I'm starting to feel like a fitness expert already.
I love it.
But let's be honest, no conversation about health and fitness is complete without talking about food,
You're absolutely right.
right?
I think it's a good time to move on to some vocabulary related to diet and nutrition.
Sounds good to me. I'm ready to get my English vocabulary in shape.
Me too. Let's dig in. Okay, so let's talk about food.
Yes, food. I am always hearing about a balanced diet.
Yes.
But what does that really mean?
Well, balanced diet means giving your body the right mix of nutrients it needs to work its best.
Okay.
That means having a variety of foods from different food groups like fruits and veggies and lean proteins, whole grains, healthy fats.
Okay, so it's not about like cutting out
No.
entire food groups or following some really restrictive fad diet?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's about making sure that you're getting enough of everything that your body needs.
Right.
You can think about it like building a colorful plate with lots of different foods.
Oh, I like that visual.
Yeah.
Now, I know calories are often part of this discussion.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I'm not always sure what those represent.
Calories are basically units of energy that
Uh-huh.
we find in food.
Okay,
Your body needs calories to be able to do everything that it needs to do,
got it.
from breathing to exercising.
So when people are counting calories, they're really just keeping track of
Yes,
how much energy they're taking in.
exactly. And it's important to find a balance between those calories that you're eating and the calories that you're burning.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about those tempting treats
Yes.
that I think we all love.
Yes.
Junk food.
Yes.
How would you define that in English?
So junk food usually means processed foods
Okay,
that are high in calories, sugar, unhealthy fats, and salt, but they're not very nutritious.
right.
They might taste good in the moment,
Yes.
but they don't give you the nutrients that you need to be really healthy.
Okay, so things like chips and candy and fast food would be junk food.
Exactly. Those are perfect examples.
Okay.
And in contrast, we have healthy food,
Okay.
which includes whole unprocessed foods that are packed with nutrients.
Okay.
So think fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins.
So it's all about making smart choices and giving our bodies
Yeah.
the good stuff.
Exactly. And speaking of fueling our bodies,
Yes.
I think it's time to head to the gym,
Yes.
at least in terms of vocabulary.
Let's do it. I'm seeing words like treadmill, barbells, dumbbells.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little tour of those gym essentials?
Of course, a treadmill is that machine that you can walk or run on inside.
Okay.
It's a good way to get your heart rate up and improve your fitness. fitness.
And what about barbells and dumbbells? Those sound kind of scary.
They can look intimidating,
Yeah.
but they're actually really useful for strength training.
Okay,
Barbells are those long metal bars that you put weights on.
right?
We often use those for exercises like squats and deadlifts.
Oh, okay, so like imagine lifting a really heavy laundry basket.
Exactly.
That's kind of like a barbell.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's using multiple muscle groups to lift that weight.
Right?
Now, dumbbells are those smaller hand weights,
Okay.
and they're really good for working on specific muscles
Okay.
and adding resistance to your workouts.
I'm feeling the burn just talking about this, but before we get too tired talking about vocabulary,
Yes.
I want to talk about a couple of types of exercise that have gotten really popular.
Yes.
Yoga and pilates.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah.
Those are great examples of mind-body exercise that focus on strength and flexibility and being present in your body.
Right.
Yoga is a series of poses and breathing exercises
Okay.
that help you to relax and improve your balance.
So it's not just about being physically fit.
Right.
It's also about mental clarity and de-stressing.
Precisely. Pilots often use special equipment,
Okay.
and it focuses on your core strength and stability.
I've heard that Pilates is really good for your posture
Yes.
and helps to prevent back pain.
That's right.
Okay.
Both yoga and Pilates have a lot of benefits.
Right.
And you can do them no matter your fitness level.
That's awesome. Maybe we need to do another deep dive just on those.
Yes, we could.
But for now, I am curious about some phrases we can use to talk about our health and fitness goals
Oh, for sure.
in everyday conversations.
Yeah, because what's the point of knowing all these words
Right.
if we can't use them?
Exactly.
Right.
So I see phrases like, I'm trying to eat healthier, or consistency is key to staying fit.
Yes, those are great starting points.
Okay.
And you can easily use them in different situations. For
Right.
example, you could say, I'm trying to eat less sugar, or I'm trying to exercise for at least 30 minutes every day.
Yeah, those are perfect. What about some phrases for when we need a little motivation?
Oh yeah, you could say something like, let's get this workout done, or you're doing great, keep going.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It's like we're building this whole toolbox
Yeah.
of phrases to help us navigate health and fitness in English.
Exactly. And the more you use these phrases, the
Right.
more comfortable you'll become.
Speaking of being comfortable, I think it's also important to talk about some of the health challenges
Yeah.
that people might face
Right.
and how to talk about those in English.
Yeah.
We have words here like obesity, hypertension, and diabetes.
Yeah.
These are kind of sensitive topics,
Yeah.
but understanding them is really important
Yeah.
for being able to talk about health in a well-informed way.
I absolutely agree. So obesity is a medical term that we use when someone has too much body fat,
Okay.
and it can increase the risk of other problems.
Okay, what about hypertension?
So hypertension is the medical term for high blood pressure.
Okay.
It's often called the silent killer
Oh, wow.
because there aren't always symptoms.
And diabetes, I know that affects how the body processes sugar.
That's right. Diabetes is a group of diseases that causes too much sugar to be in the blood.
It's
It's serious and it needs to be managed carefully.
So knowing these terms and understanding these conditions
Yeah.
is so important for taking care of ourselves
Yes.
and supporting others.
Absolutely. It gives us the knowledge to have more meaningful conversations about health
Right.
and advocate for our well-being.
This has been such a helpful conversation, Sarah.
It really has.
I feel like I've gotten so much more fluent
That's
when
awesome.
it comes to talking about health and fitness in English.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, learning a language is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
Keep practicing, keep being curious, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Great advice. So, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some key things you want our listeners to remember?
We started off talking about well-being and lifestyle,
Yeah.
highlighting that health is more than just physical fitness.
Mhm.
It's about making choices that are good for our mental and emotional and social well-being, too.
Right. And we talked about how important it is to build up our immunity,
Yes,
that amazing defense system that keeps us from getting sick.
exactly. And then we moved on to fitness, covering everything from warming up to cooling down to all the different types of exercise.
Right. Like aerobic and anaerobic.
Yes, exactly.
We even went to the gym,
We
at
did.
least with our vocabulary.
Yes.
We learned about treadmills, barbells, dumbbells.
All those important things. And of course, we couldn't forget nutrition.
Of course not.
We talked about a balanced diet and understanding calories and making good choices when it comes to junk food versus healthy foods.
It's really amazing how much we've covered.
I know it's a lot.
I feel like I could talk about health and fitness in English now.
I love that. And remember, it's not just about knowing the words.
Right.
It's about using them.
Yeah.
We practiced phrases like, I'm trying to eat healthier, and consistency is key to staying fit.
Those are so useful.
Yes, and we even touched on some more serious health conditions like obesity, hypertension, and diabetes. It's so helpful to know those terms.
Yeah.
So we can have better conversations about health.
It really is. A language can really help us take charge of our health.
Absolutely.
This has been such an insightful deep dive, Sarah.
It has.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I always love talking about language and wellness.
And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into English vocabulary for health and fitness.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you feel more prepared to have conversations about health and to make good decisions about your own well-being.
And remember, language learning is a journey.
It is.
Not a destination.
Keep practicing, stay curious, and don't be afraid to explore those new words and phrases.
Absolutely.
Before we sign off, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel
Yes, please do.
for even more language learning adventures.
We'll be here.
We're always here to help you level up your English.
Exactly. Until next time, stay healthy and keep learning.
Bye, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm really excited for today's deep dive. We're going to be looking at something that can instantly brighten someone's day and boost their happiness. Giving compliments in English? And joining me to unlock the secrets of crafting those perfect words of appreciation is the amazing Sarah.
It's great to be here, Mike.
So Sarah, I was recently reading something that just blew my mind. Getting a sincere compliment can actually give you the same positive boost as receiving cash. Can you believe that? It's like a little verbal reward that makes everyone feel good.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Compliments have a powerful impact on our well-being. And what's even better is that giving them makes both the giver and the receiver happier. Creates this beautiful cycle of positivity.
Right, this awesome feedback loop of good vibes. So today we're going to explore all sorts of compliments, from praising someone's fantastic personality to acknowledging their incredible accomplishments. And we'll even touch on how to deliver those compliments effectively so they truly resonate. Ready to dive in, Sarah?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with something we all encounter every day. Positivity. You know, those people who just radiate sunshine, even on a gloomy day. How can we compliment that kind of energy?
I think acknowledging someone's positive energy is so important. It lets them know that their bright spirit is noticed and appreciated. And it can even be contagious, inspiring others to be more positive as well.
That's true. And I love some of the vivid compliments we came across in our research. Things like, you're like sunshine on a rainy day, or you're more fun than bubble wrap. I mean, who wouldn't crack a smile at that?
Those are fantastic examples. They're specific, they're lighthearted, and they really capture the essence of someone's positive energy.
Right. And think about it. When was the last time someone's positivity brightened your day? It's a powerful thing, right?
It truly is. It's something worth celebrating and encouraging.
Okay, let's move on to compliments about personal traits. This is where we get a little more personal. And acknowledge those qualities that make someone truly unique. Right.
Yes, and I think it's important to remember that people can be very self-conscious about their personal traits, so a genuine compliment in this area can be incredibly meaningful.
For sure. I know I always appreciate it when someone notices my kindness or my sense of humor. It makes me feel like they really see me for who I am.
Exactly. These compliments go beyond surface-level observations and touch on someone's character, those qualities that make them a good friend, a supportive colleague, or simply a wonderful human being.
And of course, we can't forget the power of humor. I chuckled when I came across the compliment, "Hooksters are probably jealous of how cool you are."
That's a great one. It's flattering, it's funny, and it's sure to make someone feel good about themselves.
All right, now let's shift gears a bit and talk about complimenting intelligence, creativity, and resourcefulness. These are for those folks who are always learning, thinking outside the box, and coming up with ingenious solutions.
It's so important to acknowledge someone's effort and achievement in these areas, even in small ways, because it encourages them to keep striving, keep learning, keep growing.
Definitely. I'm all about lifelong learning, and I know our listeners are too. It feels great to have your intellectual curiosity and your ability to solve problems acknowledged, right?
Absolutely. It's a validation of our efforts and inspires us to keep exploring and expanding our knowledge.
And some of these compliments are so clever, like, "I bet you do crossword puzzles in ink." It's a witty way of saying you're so sharp.
I love that one. It's playful and insightful.
Okay, now let's talk about complimenting accomplishments. These are for those moments when someone has achieved something remarkable, big or small.
What's so powerful about compliments tied to achievements is that they can be incredibly motivating. They reinforce the idea that hard work pays off. and that success is worth celebrating.
I totally agree. One example that really struck me was actions speak louder than words, and yours tell an incredible story. It's such a powerful way of acknowledging someone's effort and the impact they've made.
It really is. It highlights their dedication and the positive results they've achieved.
And think about an accomplishment you're truly proud of. How would it feel to have someone acknowledge that achievement, to see the value in your hard work? It's such a fantastic feeling, isn't it?
You're right. It's a reminder that we all have the potential to achieve great things, and that our efforts deserve to be recognized and celebrated.
Now, things get a bit more heartwarming when we talk about complementing personal relationships, those special bonds we have with friends, family, and loved ones. Sometimes it can be difficult to express how much those relationships mean to us.
You're absolutely right. Expressing appreciation for those we care about can sometimes feel awkward or unnecessary, but it can make a huge difference. Compliments that focus on the positive impact someone has on others can truly strengthen those bonds and bring us closer together.
And sometimes the simplest compliments are the most powerful, like "you're an awesome friend." It's straightforward, but it comes straight from the heart.
I completely agree. A genuine expression of appreciation, however simple, can go a long way in making someone feel loved and valued.
I also came across compliments like "you're a gift to those around you," or "the world is a better place because you're in it." Those are so beautiful, aren't they?
They really are. They acknowledge the positive influence someone has on their loved ones and the world around them, and they remind us of the importance of cherishing those relationships.
Now, this next category can be a little tricky. We're going to talk about complimenting appearance, but with some important caveats.
Yes, this is an area where we need to be mindful and tread carefully. While it's natural to appreciate someone's appearance, it's crucial to be aware of context and sensitivity.
Exactly. I was reading that compliments about someone's body shape or weight can be particularly harmful, especially to those who might be struggling with body image issues. We need to be sensitive to the potential impact of our words.
I couldn't agree more. It's always better to err on the side of caution and avoid comments that could make someone feel uncomfortable or self-conscious. Instead, we can focus on complimenting things like someone's style, their confidence, or even their voice.
I love those suggestions. It's about acknowledging how someone presents themselves to the world without focusing solely on their physical attributes, like "you have such a great sense of style," or "your confidence is infectious." Those are much safer and more empowering compliments.
You're spot on. They celebrate someone's individuality and how they choose to express themselves, without crossing any boundaries.
Okay, let's lighten things up again with some fun over-the-top compliments. I found some hilarious ones, like "you're even better than a unicorn because you're real," or "on a scale from 1 to 10, you're an 11."
Those are definitely creative and entertaining, but I think it's important to note that overly general compliments can sometimes fall flat. They might lack the personal touch that makes a compliment truly meaningful.
That's a good point. And that's where personalization comes in. It's about tailoring your compliments to the specific person you're speaking to, making them feel genuinely seen and appreciated. Like, instead of just saying "you're great," you might say "you're great at making everyone feel welcome." It's all about noticing the details and being specific in your praise.
That's right. Personalizing your compliments shows that you've taken the time to truly observe and appreciate the person. It makes your words more impactful and memorable.
We've covered a lot of ground on giving compliments, but what about receiving them? Some people get flustered or don't know how to respond gracefully. What are your thoughts on that, Sarah?
That's an important point, Mike. Accepting compliments gracefully is just as crucial as giving them well. A simple "thank you" is always appropriate. You can also add a bit more like "I appreciate that," or "that's very kind of you to say."
Those are great suggestions. It shows that you acknowledge and appreciate the compliment without downplaying or deflecting it. And I think it's essential for all of us to practice both giving and receiving compliments with grace and sincerity, don't you think?
I couldn't agree more. It's a valuable skill to develop, and it can truly enrich our interactions and relationships.
You know, Sarah, beyond the specific words I use, I think it's really the intention and sincerity behind a compliment that makes all the difference.
Oh, absolutely. You can always tell when a compliment is genuine, can't you? It just feels different, more heartfelt.
For sure. It's like that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you know someone is being totally real with you. It makes the compliment so much more meaningful.
It really does. And I think it's worth remembering that compliments don't need to be saved for big occasions or extraordinary achievements. Sometimes the smallest gestures of kindness, a thoughtful remark, or simply acknowledging someone's effort can make their day.
I love that. It's those little sparks of positivity we can share with each other every day that add up to something much bigger. It's like sprinkling a little magic into ordinary moments.
It's about helping people feel seen, appreciated, and valued, which can be incredibly powerful.
Okay, Sarah, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of compliments, let me ask you this. What unique compliment are you going to give today based on what we've discussed?
That's a great question. I think I'll tell my coworker how much I appreciate her willingness to lend a hand, even when she's swamped with her own work. Her generosity and team spirit really brighten up our office.
I love that. It's specific, genuine, and it acknowledges a quality you truly admire in her.
What about you, Mike? Any compliments on your mind?
You know what? I'm going to challenge myself to compliment a complete stranger today. Maybe the barista who makes my morning coffee. Or someone I pass on the street. You never know how much a simple compliment can impact someone's day.
That's a wonderful idea. Spreading kindness and appreciation, even in small ways, can have a ripple effect. It's about building a more positive and supportive world, one compliment at a time.
Beautifully said. And remember, everyone, you don't have to be a native English speaker to master the art of giving compliments. It's about the thought, the feeling, and that genuine desire to make someone's day a little brighter.
You got it. A sincere compliment goes beyond words. It speaks to the heart no matter what language you speak.
So true. Go out there and spread some positivity with your words.
We'll be back with a brand new deep dive soon.
But in the meantime, keep those compliments flowing, everyone. Let's make the world a bit brighter, one kind word at a time. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more deep dives into the nuances of English communication. We're passionate about helping you become more confident and articulate in English. So join us on this exciting journey of language learning.
See you next time.
You know, Sarah, beyond the specific words we use, I think it's really the intention and sincerity behind a compliment that makes all the difference.
Oh, absolutely. You can always tell when a compliment is genuine, can't you? It just feels different, more heartfelt.
For sure. It's like that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you know someone is being totally real with you. It makes the compliment so much more meaningful.
It really does. And I think it's worth remembering that compliments don't need to be saved for big occasions or extraordinary achievements. Sometimes the smallest gestures of kindness, a thoughtful remark, or simply acknowledging someone's effort can make their day.
I love that. It's those little sparks of positivity we can share with each other every day that add up to something much bigger. It's like sprinkling a little magic into ordinary moments.
It's about helping people feel seen, appreciated, and valued, which can be incredibly powerful.
Okay, Sarah, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of compliments, let me ask you this. What unique compliment are you going to give today based on what we've discussed?
That's a great question. I think I'll tell my coworker how much I appreciate her willingness to lend a hand, even when she's swamped with her own work. Her generosity and team spirit really brighten up our office.
I love that. It's specific, genuine, and it acknowledges a quality you truly admire in her.
What about you, Mike? Any compliments on your mind?
You know what? I'm going to challenge myself to compliment a complete stranger today. Maybe the barista who makes my morning coffee. Or someone I pass on the street. You never know how much a simple compliment can impact someone's day.
That's a wonderful idea. Spreading kindness and appreciation, even in small ways, can have a ripple effect. It's about building a more positive and supportive world, one compliment at a time.
Beautiful said. And remember, everyone, you don't have to be a native English speaker to master the art of giving compliments. It's about the thought, the feeling, and that genuine desire to make someone's day a little brighter.
You got it. A sincere compliment goes beyond words. It speaks to the heart no matter what language you speak.
So true. Go out there and spread some positivity with your words.
We'll be back with a brand new deep dive soon.
But in the meantime, keep those compliments flowing, everyone. Let's make the world a bit brighter, one kind word at a time. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more deep dives into the nuances of English communication. We're passionate about helping you become more confident and articulate in English. So join us on this exciting journey of language learning.
See you next time.
So until then, keep practicing those compliments, and we'll see you all next time for another deep dive into the nuances of English.
See you later. KPAG.
Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm so glad you could join us for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something that's universal, but expressed in incredibly diverse ways: love and relationships. And to help us navigate this fascinating linguistic landscape, we have the brilliant Sarah joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Sarah, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
You know, I was thinking about it earlier when I was prepping for this deep dive, and it really struck me just how many unique phrases and idioms English has for this topic.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It really is remarkable.
It's like we needed a whole secret code just to express the various stages and shades of love. I mean, we have everything from puppy love to describe those first innocent crushes all the way to growing old together, which kind of evokes, you know, a lifetime of commitment.
Yeah, it really speaks volumes about how significant love and relationships are in English-speaking cultures.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the sheer number of phrases, but it's also the distinct ways we use language, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
For instance, you wouldn't use the same language talking to your best friend about a crush as you would with your grandmother.
Oh, absolutely. That's so true.
Right?
And that's something that English learners really need to be aware of. There's a big difference between saying, I fancy you and I'm deeply in love with you. Getting those two mixed up could lead to some awkward moments.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Understanding the nuances of formality and informality is really crucial. Think of it like a dress code for your language.
Okay.
Platonic, for example, is a more formal term to describe a friendship without romantic feelings.
Right.
Whereas, like, having a thing for someone is much more casual and playful.
Yeah, you wouldn't use platonic in a casual conversation. It would sound way too stiff.
Exactly.
And on that note, it's interesting how we have expressions for both the idealization of love and the more realistic, sometimes messy side of relationships.
Yeah.
We dream of love at first sight and finding our soulmates. But we also have terms like breakup and infidelity.
Right.
For when things don't go as planned.
It's like we're acknowledging that love isn't always a fairy tale.
Right?
And this is where it gets really interesting. Some of the expressions that we use, especially for heartbreak, use surprisingly intense, even violent imagery.
Oh, really?
We talk about falling head over heels, which sounds kind of dangerous, or being dumped as if you've been discarded like trash.
Yeah, dumping someone must sound harsh, doesn't it?
It
It
does.
sounds like you're literally throwing them away.
Exactly. It makes you wonder why we use such forceful language when we're talking about something as tender as love. Perhaps it reflects how powerful those emotions can be. The highs are exhilarating, but the lows can feel devastating, almost like a physical blow.
It's true. Heartbreak can feel physically painful, can it?
It can.
And it's not just about breakups either. We have phrases like driving someone crazy with desire, which evokes a sense of losing control, almost like a force of nature. But of course, it's not all doom and gloom. We all have tons of endearing expressions that capture the sweeter side of love.
Oh, absolutely. Phrases like the apple of my eye or saying that you're smitten with someone are incredibly charming.
They really are.
Don't you think?
And they often have fascinating historical roots. Like the apple of my eye dates back centuries. It originally referred to the pupil, which was seen as essential for sight and therefore extremely precious. It's amazing how these expressions have evolved over time, but still retain their emotional power.
It is fascinating, isn't it? And it speaks to that enduring human need to express these complex feelings of love and connection.
Speaking of evolution, it's interesting how some phrases gain popularity, while others kind of fade away. You don't hear people saying courting someone as much these days. It feels almost old-fashioned.
You're right. Going on a date or hanging out are much more common now.
It makes you realize how language is constantly adapting to reflect the changing dynamics of relationships.
Exactly. And this leads us to another crucial element of love and relationship vocabulary, phrasal verbs.
Well, yes.
We ask someone out, we go out on dates, we break up when things don't work out, and hopefully we settle down with someone special.
Phrasal verbs are essential for navigating the ups and downs of relationships in English.
I think so.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
But I know they can be a bit tricky for learners because they often have multiple meanings and can change depending on the context.
Absolutely. Take the phrasal verb go out, for example.
Okay.
It can mean simply leaving your house, I'm going out for a walk, or it can refer to dating someone. We've been going out for 6 months. The context is key.
Yeah, it is indeed. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to how native speakers use these phrasal verbs in different situations. It's like learning the secret handshake of fluency.
I love that analogy. It's all about getting comfortable with the nuances and the idioms that make English so expressive. But, beyond just fluency, I think learning these phrases kind of offers a window into the English-speaking world's attitudes towards love and relationships.
That's a great point. It's not just about understanding the words themselves, but also the cultural values and beliefs they reflect.
Yes.
Like the phrase making things official might have different connotations depending on the culture and how relationships are typically viewed.
Exactly. It's about understanding the unspoken rules and expectations that shape how people interact in different cultures.
And speaking of unspoken rules, I've always been fascinated by how we use the verb to see when talking about dating.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm seeing someone. It's so understated, isn't it?
It is, and it's a great example of how English can be quite subtle when it comes to matters of the heart. Seeing someone implies a romantic connection without explicitly stating it. It leaves room for interpretation, which can be very intentional in the early stages of a relationship.
It's like testing the waters, before diving headfirst into a full-blown relationship. And on that note, some of our expressions for love are so poetic and evocative.
They are.
The light of my life, for instance. It's just beautiful, isn't it?
It is. It paints such a vivid picture of someone who brings joy and radiance into your world.
And it highlights how we often use metaphors from the natural world to describe love. My heart is a flame. You set my soul on fire. These phrases convey the intensity and passion of love, almost like an uncontrollable force.
Absolutely.
It's not just positive feelings either. We have phrases like carrying a torch for someone, which implies a longing, often unrequited love.
Yeah.
It's interesting how even in our language, we acknowledge the bittersweet aspects of love.
Absolutely. Carrying a torch actually has a fascinating origin.
Does it?
It comes from ancient Greek mythology, where rejected lovers would literally carry torches
Wow.
to symbolize their unrequited love.
I never knew that. It's amazing how these phrases have such deep roots in history and mythology. And speaking of history, I find it fascinating how gender roles and societal expectations have influenced the language of love. Like the phrase, a man's got to do what a man's got to do, often implies a sense of duty and responsibility, particularly in the context of relationships and providing for a family.
That's a really insightful observation. It does reflect traditional gender roles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And how about the phrase wearing the pants in a relationship? That one definitely evokes a sense of power dynamics and who's in control.
It does, and it's interesting to think about how these phrases might be perceived differently in modern relationships, where those traditional roles are being challenged and redefined. Speaking of challenges, some phrases highlight the humorous side of relationships.
Oh, for sure.
You drive me crazy. Could be endearing or exasperating, depending on the context.
Oh, definitely. It captures that playful banter and loving exasperation that can be part of a close relationship. And it's a reminder that love doesn't always have to be serious and intense. There's room for laughter and lightheartedness, too.
Absolutely. We need those moments of levity to balance out the more intense emotions that come with love and relationships. And it's also important to remember that language is always evolving.
It is.
New phrases and slang terms emerge all the time, especially among younger generations.
That's right. And that's what keeps language so vibrant and dynamic. It's constantly adapting to reflect the changing ways we experience and talk about love. Think about terms like ghosting or benching, which describe very specific dating behaviors that have become more prevalent with the rise of social media and online dating.
Those are perfect examples. And it shows how technology and social trends have a direct impact on the way we communicate about relationships. It's like language is a living organism, constantly growing and changing.
It is.
And for English learners, keeping up with these changes could be part of the fun. It's like you're always unlocking new levels of understanding.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the key is to just embrace this playful, ever-evolving aspect of language. Don't be afraid to experiment with new phrases and idioms. Even if you make a mistake, it's all part of the learning process.
Right. And the more you immerse yourself in the culture, the more naturally these expressions will come to you.
Absolutely.
Watch movies, listen to music, talk to native speakers. Don't be shy about asking questions. It's all about absorbing the language in its natural habitat.
That's excellent advice. And remember, learning a language is a journey, not a destination. So be patient with yourself and enjoy the process. Who knows? You might even find that your newfound language skills lead to some unexpected connections and experiences along the way.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the language of love and relationships in English. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you.
The pleasure was all mine. I always enjoy these conversations.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this linguistic adventure. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and maybe even learned a few new phrases to spice up your English conversations.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more deep dives into the fascinating world of language. Until next time, happy learning.
It really has been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It has.
And I think what's so captivating about the language of love and relationships is that it's constantly evolving. New phrases pop up, old ones fade away. It's a reflection of how we as a society are constantly redefining what love and relationships mean to us.
Absolutely, and that's what makes it so intriguing for language learners. It's not just about memorizing vocabulary, it's about understanding the cultural context, the nuances, the humor, the the heartbreak, all the messy, beautiful things that make up human connection.
So well said. And as we wrap up, I'm curious, what advice would you give to English learners who are feeling a bit overwhelmed by all these phrases and idioms? Any tips for making them stick?
That's a great question. I'd say first and foremost, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Language learning is all about experimentation and practice. The more you use these expressions, the more comfortable you'll become. And don't just focus on memorizing definitions. Try understand the imagery behind them, the emotions they evoke, the stories they tell.
That's such great advice. It's like you're not just learning words, you're learning a whole new way of seeing the world and expressing yourself.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to learn everything at once.
Okay.
Start with a few phrases that resonate with you, maybe ones that relate to your own experiences with love and relationships, and then gradually expand your repertoire.
I like that strategy. It's about making it personal and finding those connections that make language learning truly meaningful.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of context. Watch movies, listen to songs, read books, pay attention to how native speakers use these phrases in everyday conversation. The more you immerse yourself in the language, the more naturally it will start to flow.
Such valuable advice. It's about surrounding yourself with the language and letting it seep into your subconscious.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, I'm struck by something you said earlier about how language reflects cultural values. And I think that's a really important point for English learners to keep in mind. The way we talk about love and relationships reveals a lot about our beliefs and expectations, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and it can vary significantly across cultures. So while learning these phrases is essential for fluency, it's equally important to be mindful of the cultural context and to avoid making assumptions or generalizations.
That's a crucial point. It's about respecting the cultural differences and understanding that language is not always a one-to-one translation of meaning.
Exactly. It's about appreciating the diversity of perspectives and the richness that different cultures bring to the language of love.
Well said, Sarah. It's been an absolute delight having you on the Learn English Lab today. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights.
The pleasure was all mine, Mike. It's always a joy to discuss language and its intricate connection to human experience.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the language of love and relationships in English. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and learned some valuable lessons along the way. Don't forget to share your favorite love and relationship phrases in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more language learning adventures. Until next time, happy learning. COCPS. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and with me today is the fantastic Sarah. We're going to be diving into weather words.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Yeah, so, we all use basic words like rainy or sunny, but, there are a lot more interesting words out there.
Absolutely, and thinking about how authors use weather to, really set the scene and evoke emotions in their writing, it's fascinating.
So how about this, just to make it relatable to all of our listeners out there? What's the weather like for you right now?
I would say it's pretty blustery.
Blustery. Okay. See, right off the bat, we have a much better word than just saying windy.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? Blustery isn't just wind. It's forceful and almost a little bit chaotic. And it makes you think how different cultures perceive and describe weather, leading to all sorts of really unique expressions in different languages.
Okay. I am excited to learn more. Where should we even begin?
Well, why don't we try to approach it systematically? Let's start with temperature. There's such a range, from scorching hot to frigidly cold.
I love those. Scorching, you can almost feel the heat.
Right.
And frigidly cold. Perfect for a chilling scene in a book or something.
Exactly. Then we have rain. Think beyond just rain and consider drizzle, which is obviously a light sprinkle, or downpour, meaning a sudden, heavy deluge.
Okay.
Or even torrential, which suggests a dangerous amount of rain.
I remember once I got caught in a torrential downpour, and it was like the sky was just unleashing buckets of water on me. Oh, speaking of precipitation, what about snow?
Snow. We have flurries, which are light and fun, and blizzards, which are heavy and can shut everything down. And then, of course, there's sleet, that awful mix of rain and the snow.
Sleet, the worst of both worlds.
Yeah. And then let's not forget about wind. It can be a gentle breeze that rustles leaves, or a powerful gale that bends trees and whips up the ocean.
It's like that scene in Titanic with the wind whipping through her hair as she stands on the front of the ship. Weather words could be so cinematic.
Right, they can evoke such strong visuals. And And how about clouds? We have billowing cumulus clouds, those, fluffy white naiants that drift across the sky.
Like cotton candy floating in the blue.
Yeah. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have ominous storm clouds, those dark, kind of brooding masses that signal a storm is coming.
Those always remind me of old horror movies or something, like something scary is about to happen.
Yeah. Like the weather can foreshadow events and create suspense.
It really is. So we've covered temperature, rain, snow, wind, and clouds. Anything else?
Well, think about those moments when the weather's transitioning. Phrases like clearing up when the clouds part and the sun comes out.
Like a breath of fresh air.
Or closing in when, the sky gets darker and it feels like something's coming. Or even melting away as a storm subsides and everything gets calm again.
That one just makes me feel relaxed.
Yeah, all of these words, from the basic ones to the more descriptive ones, contribute to how we see and experience weather, both in our own lives and in the stories we tell.
I can't believe how many words we've talked about already, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
There are so many more interesting words to uncover. Why don't we dive deeper into specific categories?
Okay, let's start with rain, I think. It's crazy how many different ways there are to describe, water falling from the sky, basically.
It is. It really shows how a simple thing can inspire such a range of language. Like, take, for instance, drizzle. It might seem basic, but actually...
Oh, hold on. I need to get my notebook. I have a feeling this is about to get good.
Yeah, I think you'll be interested in this. The word drizzle comes from the Middle English word drizzlin, which is thought to be what we called imitative in origin. So basically, the sound of the word is like the sound of the rain.
So the word actually sounds like what it describes.
Exactly. And that's not unusual with weather words. A lot of them came from people trying to describe the sounds and the way things feel in the natural world.
That makes sense. So beyond drizzle, what other rain words have interesting stories behind them?
Okay, well, how about downpour? This is a newer word from around the 19th century. It's a compound word combining down and pour, which is very straightforward.
That's interesting. It seems like such a common word now.
I know, right? But it really shows how language can change so quickly to reflect, what we experience and observe.
This is so cool. I'm looking at weather words in a whole new way now.
That's great. There's always something new to discover.
Wow. I feel like we could talk about rain all day. But there's a lot more to weather than just rain, right?
Right. I think we have to talk about wind, too. I mean, from a gentle breeze to a powerful hurricane, wind has such a huge impact on our experience of weather.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We already talked about words like breeze and gale, but I'm wondering if there are any more, interesting words we could use to describe wind.
Well, there's one word that I always think is really cool, zephyr. It's a Greek word, and it means a really gentle, warm west wind.
Zephyr. That sounds kind of magical.
It does, right? It makes you think of peace and tranquility. You often see it in poems or literature to create that kind of idyllic atmosphere.
Yeah, it does have a very, calming feel to it.
Definitely. And speaking of evocative words, there's also gust. Unlike zephyr, this one really gives you that sense of suddenness and force. It's a quick burst of wind that can, take you by surprise.
Oh, I hate it when a gust of wind messes up my hair.
Yeah, it's the worst. But, gust can also describe more serious weather events like thunderstorms or even tornadoes.
Right. It really emphasizes the power of nature.
Definitely. And it shows how language can be both beautiful and, powerful. It can capture so many nuances of our experiences.
I'm learning so much today. It's I never realized how complex and how beautiful weather words can be.
I'm glad to hear that. And you know what? We haven't even talked about clouds yet.
Oh yeah, clouds. They're nature's artwork.
I love that. They really are. And each type of cloud has a name and characteristics that are unique to them. So for example, we have cirrus clouds. They're those really wisty, feathery clouds that you usually see really high in the sky.
Those are my favorite. They look like brushstrokes across the sky.
They are beautiful. And then there are cumulus clouds. Those are the really puffy, cotton-like clouds that we often see on sunny days.
Those always remind me of being a kid, lying on the grass and looking for shapes in the clouds.
That's a lovely memory. And of course, there are stratus clouds, which are the ones that make those gray, overcast skies that sometimes mean it's going to rain or snow.
Right. It's amazing how, just water vapor in the atmosphere can create so many different, things to look at.
I know, right? And learning the names of all these different cloud formations can really help you understand and appreciate the world around us more.
This has been such a great conversation, Sarah. I feel like I'm seeing the weather in a whole new way.
That's great to hear. And as we wrap up our discussion, I want to mention one last thing about weather vocabulary idioms.
Ooh, idioms. Those are always fun.
They really are. And when it comes to weather, English has tons of idioms that we use all the time.
Like raining cats and dogs. Everyone knows that one.
That's a classic one. And even though it doesn't literally mean that animals are falling from the sky, it's such a vivid way to describe heavy rain.
What other weather idioms are there?
Well, one of my favorites is to chase rainbows.
That one sounds interesting.
Yeah, it basically means that you're trying to achieve something that is like impossible or unrealistic, just like trying to catch a rainbow, which is an optical illusion. Chasing after a dream that can't come true will probably lead to disappointment.
Wow, that's actually really deep. I never thought about that one like that before.
You see, idioms are like little windows into the history and culture of a language.
This has been such a fascinating conversation, Sarah. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but I've already learned so much.
Me too. It's been really fun. I hope our listeners have enjoyed it as well.
It's crazy to think about how something like weather, which seems so, basic, can have such a wide range of vocabulary.
It really is, and it makes you realize that language is always changing, just like the weather itself. Who knows, maybe someday there will be whole new words for weather patterns that don't even exist yet.
That's a really interesting thought. It's like language is a living, breathing thing that, adapts and grows with the times.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to stay curious, to never stop learning, really embrace all the little details and variations in language.
Absolutely. So for our listeners who want to keep learning about weather words, what tips would you give them?
Well, I would say pay attention to the language used in weather forecasts and in books and movies, and even just in normal conversation. Listen for descriptive words and idioms and metaphors, and, don't be afraid to look up words you don't know.
That's great advice. And, I think the important thing is to remember that learning a language is a journey. There's always more to discover.
I agree. The more you explore, the more you'll appreciate the beauty and complexity of language.
This has been such a great conversation, Sarah. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of weather words.
Me too, Mike. It's always fun to dive deep into, the details of language.
And to everyone watching, thank you for joining us on this exploration of English. We hope you learned something new today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more deep dives into the world of language. See you next time. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and wow, I'm so excited for this deep dive. We're going to be talking about how to describe your ideal day, in English. Not just learning the vocabulary, but really getting to the heart of what makes you happy. And to help us unpack all of this, we have the amazing Sarah, our language expert.
I'm so happy to be here, Mike. It's going to be a great episode.
So before we jump into the specifics of how to describe a whole day, what even is an ideal day, right? Is it like a checklist of activities or is it more of a feeling? What do you think?
It's a good question, and it's tempting, I think, to go straight to those activities, but an ideal day is really personal. It's unique to you or to me. It's more about how you feel. At the end of the day, happy, fulfilled, at peace, that kind of thing, more than the actual things that you did.
Oh, okay. So it's not necessarily about forcing myself to go for a run, but more about the energy and the sense of accomplishment I feel after I finish the run.
Exactly. Someone else might feel that way after they curl up with a good book. It's all about what brings you joy, listener. So take a moment before we go any further and just think about that. What does ideal actually mean for you personally?
Yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in what we think we should want, not what actually makes us happy.
That's so true. But that's where the magic happens, when we actually focus on what makes us happy.
Okay, so our listeners have thought about that a little bit. Now, how do they go about describing a whole day in English? It seems like a lot to put into words.
Yeah, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But having a structure can really help. So think about it like the flow of the day. You start with the morning, then you move to the main activities that you would do. Maybe consider meals and breaks, and then how you would wind down at the end of the day in the evening.
Okay, I like that. It's kind of like building a story scene by scene.
Yeah.
So let's walk through that a little bit. So starting with the morning, how would your perfect morning unfold? What time were we waking up? And what's the first amazing thing you do when you wake up?
Okay, well, for me, I would wake up naturally. No alarm clock. maybe like 7 or 8 o'clock when the sun is just starting to peek in through the windows. And I would throw open those windows and let in the fresh air, and the birds are singing.
Oh, that already sounds so peaceful. I can feel a gentle breeze.
And listener, there's no right or wrong answer here. Maybe you're up before the sun, hitting the gym, or going for a run. Or maybe it's a slower start, like a slow breakfast, reading the news and sipping some coffee as you ease into the day.
Yeah. It's those personal touches that make it special. Instead of just coffee, it's like you're savoring the perfect cappuccino with almond milk or whatever your favorite is.
Exactly. Those details make your description come alive and help people really understand what makes this day so special for you.
Okay, so we've got the morning routine down. Now what? What are those key activities that would make this day truly stand out?
Okay, now's the time to let your imagination go wild. Spending time with your loved ones, diving into a hobby that you're passionate about, or maybe going on some kind of adventure that gets your adrenaline pumping.
Yeah, like for all of our listeners who love the outdoors, maybe it's hiking to a stunning view or kayaking on a peaceful lake.
Exactly. And for those who are more creative, maybe it's painting a masterpiece or writing a story or composing some music. The possibilities are endless.
And it's not just the activity itself, right? It's about how you describe it.
Yeah.
So instead of saying I would go kayaking, it's like, I'd glide across the mirror-like surface of a lake, surrounded by the beauty of nature.
Yes, Mike, that descriptive language really paints a picture and brings that day to life for whoever's listening.
And I think it's important to say that an ideal day doesn't have to be packed with activities.
Right.
Like part of it could just be being relaxing and soaking in the present moment.
Oh, absolutely. Rest and relaxation are just as important as any other activity. It's about finding a good balance.
Now, I don't know about you, Sarah, but no ideal day for me is complete without some amazing food. So where does food fit into all of this?
Ugh, the culinary delights. This is another chance to really tap into those sensory details. Are we talking about a home-cooked meal? Or going to a cute little restaurant? Or packing a picnic basket and enjoying your meal in nature?
Ooh, a picnic sounds nice. I can picture it. A checkered blanket under a shady tree, sun on my face, the smell of fresh bread and fruit in the air.
I love it. You see how those details make it come alive? It's about that full experience, not just eating.
All right, so we've had an amazing morning, we've done our activities,
Yeah.
and we've had some great food. Now it's time to wind down. How does your ideal day come to a close? What's that perfect evening routine?
Well, for me, it would be something calming and restorative, like reading a good book by the fireplace, maybe taking a bath, or just spending time with family sharing stories and laughter.
That sounds so nice. For others, it might be a little bit more entertaining, like watching a movie under the stars or going to a concert.
Yeah, anything that brings you joy as you get ready to go to sleep.
Speaking of sleep, I am feeling relaxed. Just talk about all of this. But before we drift off to dreamland, we have to talk about something.
Oh, really? What's that?
Well, it's the power of language. We've been hinting at it throughout this conversation, but how important is it to use really descriptive language when you're describing your day?
Oh, it's so important, Mike. Descriptive language is what makes your ideal day come alive for other people. It's what turns a simple sentence like, I went to the beach, into a more captivating experience. Like, I spent a relaxing day at the beach listening to the soothing sound of the waves crashing on the shore.
Wow, you just transported us there. I can feel the sand between my toes and smell the salty air.
Exactly. Vivid adjectives, evocative verbs, sensory details, they all come together to create that immersive experience.
So how can our listeners start building their descriptive vocabulary? Any tips for making those words stick?
One really good way is to just be more mindful of the language you encounter every day. Like, pay attention to how authors or speakers or even your friends use words to create those images and feelings.
So it's like turning your everyday life into a little language lesson.
Precisely. You could also keep a vocabulary journal. Write down new words and phrases and their definitions, and maybe try using them in some sentences.
That's a good tip. And I bet that making flashcards or using those words in conversation with a friend or language partner can really help solidify them.
Absolutely. The more you actively engage with new vocabulary, the more natural it's going to become.
Okay, so we've given our listeners some strategies for improving their language skills.
Yeah.
Now, I'm kind of craving a concrete example. Can we look at a sample ideal day description and see how all these elements come together?
I would love to. Let's take a look.
Okay, so this example starts with the morning. And wow, they really set the scene. They talk about waking up feeling refreshed and full of energy, and that already tells us so much about the day's tone.
It does. And they go on to talk about opening their windows, letting in the fresh air and sunlight, and then they describe having a light breakfast, like toast with jam and fruit, All of these details create such a sense of peace and tranquility.
And the imagery continues as they describe going for a walk in the park. They talk about how the weather is perfect, how the trees are green, the flowers are blooming. They even bring their camera to capture the beautiful scenery.
And later they describe their afternoon at the beach. I love how they include that sensory detail of the soothing sound of the waves. It's like we can hear it ourselves.
It's so evocative. And they blend activities with feelings really well. They mention spending time with their best friend at a cozy cafe, laughing for hours, sharing stories. It's not just about the place, but about the emotional connection.
It shows how shared experiences contribute to their happiness.
And as the day goes on, they also include creative activities, like painting or writing. They talk about how these activities let them express themselves and their creativity. It's just a really well-rounded picture of a perfect day.
It really is. They've done such a good job of bringing together activities, feelings, and sensory details.
And I love how they end the day with a peaceful evening routine, spending time with family, reflecting on the day, and practicing gratitude. It's a beautiful way to end the day.
It really is. This example just shows us how to describe an ideal day using vivid language and thoughtful details.
But remember, listeners, this is just one example. Your ideal day will be unique to you. It'll reflect your passions, your values, and your dreams. Don't be afraid to let your personality shine through.
There's no one right way to envision your perfect day. The most important thing is that it resonates with you.
Okay, so we've seen a fantastic example. But before we unleash our listeners to create their own descriptions, I want to give them one more little boost, a vocabulary power-up.
Ooh, I like that idea. A vocabulary boost can help our listeners express their day with even more detail.
Exactly. And we have a handy list of words and phrases that we can share, conveniently organized by time of day or type of activity.
Fantastic. A thematically organized list makes it so much easier to learn and apply new vocabulary.
So for our early birds who are all about that morning routine, we have words like sunrise, fresh, peaceful, energizing, breakfast, tea, coffee, exercise, walk, and yoga.
And for those whose ideal day is a little bit more adventurous, we have words like relaxing, exciting, creative, adventurous, fun, enjoyable, fulfilling, and meaningful.
I'm feeling inspired already. And of course, we can't forget about food. For our foodies out there, we have words like delicious, tasty, homemade, fresh, healthy, sweet, savory, cozy restaurant, and picnic.
What a great list. And as we move into the evening, we have words like sunset, calm, quiet family friends, movie book, music reflection, and gratitude.
Those words just evoke such a sense of peace. And finally, to capture that overall feeling of the day, we have words like happy, relaxed, joyful, content, peaceful, excited, fulfilled, and grateful.
What a wonderful collection of words.
It's like a treasure trove of language.
Yeah.
And remember, listeners, this is just a starting point. Don't be afraid to use a dictionary or a thesaurus, or look online for more words and phrases that resonate with you.
The more you explore, the more you'll discover the richness and the nuances of the English language.
So we've covered a lot today. From defining what an ideal day means, to exploring descriptive language and giving you a vocabulary boost. But there's one question we haven't answered yet.
What's that, Mike?
How can our listeners actually practice describing their ideal day in English? It's one thing to have all these great words and ideas in your head, but how do we put them into practice?
You're so right. Practice is essential for learning any language. It helps us learn new vocabulary, become more fluent, and build our confidence.
So let's brainstorm some fun ways to practice. What are your top tips?
Well, one of the simplest and most effective ways is to just write it down. Take some time to craft a detailed description using all of the language that we've talked about.
So it's like creating your own little blueprint for happiness. And don't worry about making it perfect. Just focus on getting your ideas down.
And once you've written it down, you can practice speaking it out loud. This will help you refine your pronunciation and get more comfortable using those new words and phrases.
If you're feeling brave, you can even record yourself speaking and listen back to it.
That's a good idea. Listening back to yourself can be really helpful for noticing any patterns in your pronunciation or any areas where you might be stumbling over certain words.
And why not share your ideal day description with a friend or family member or language partner? You can get feedback on your language skills, and you might even get some inspiration from hearing how others describe their ideal days.
I love that idea. It's a great way to connect with others and learn from each other.
And don't forget about visuals. If you learn best by seeing things, try drawing or finding pictures that represent your ideal day and use those as prompts to help you describe it.
Visual aids are a great way to trigger your imagination and memory.
So there you have it, listeners, a whole bunch of strategies for practicing your ideal day description and improving your English.
The most important thing is to have fun and be creative. Don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best for you.
Well, that brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive into describing your ideal day. We've covered a lot, but there's still so much more to explore.
We'll be back with part 2 soon.
Until then, keep dreaming big. Keep practicing and keep those language skills shining.
Welcome back to the Learn English Lab. We're diving even deeper today into how to describe your ideal day and how to really make those descriptions fantastic.
You know, Sarah, when we were talking earlier, I was thinking about something interesting about this whole idea of an ideal day. It's not just about practicing English, it's also a really great way to learn more about yourself.
I completely agree. When we think about our perfect day, we're really revealing our values, our priorities, the things that are important to us.
It's like we're looking in a mirror. And by putting those thoughts into words, we're not just improving our language skills, we're also understanding ourselves better.
Exactly. And that understanding can help us make better choices in our everyday lives.
I love that. Okay, so describing an ideal day is a fun way to practice English, and it's also a really meaningful way to learn about ourselves. But let's get back to some practical tips. Last time we talked about descriptive language. Can we go into a little more detail about that? What are some specific things our listeners can do to make their descriptions really stand out?
One really powerful technique is to use all 5 senses. Don't just describe what you would see, but also what you would hear, smell, taste, and even touch.
Oh, I like that. So instead of just saying, I would have a picnic in the park, I could say something like, I'd spread out a blanket under a shady tree and the smell of freshly cut grass would be all around. I'd bite into a juicy strawberry and savor the sweetness, and then enjoy the satisfying crunch of a fresh baguette.
Exactly. Those sensory details pull your listener right into your ideal day and make it much more vivid and memorable.
It's like we're right there with you, experiencing it. What are some other ways to make our descriptions more lively and engaging?
Using figurative language can be really effective. Think about metaphors and similes. They can make your descriptions more interesting by creating comparisons.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Instead of saying, the sun was shining brightly, you could say, the sun was a golden orb radiating warmth like a giant hug.
Wow, that's much more vivid. What about similes? How can those help?
Similes are great too. For example, instead of the clouds were fluffy, you could say the clouds were like cotton candy drifting across the azure sky.
I love that imagery. It adds a touch of whimsy and makes the description more memorable.
And don't forget about using strong verbs and adjectives. Instead of using weak or general words, choose ones that are more specific and interesting. Like instead of walk, you could use stroll, saunter, or hike, depending on where you're walking and how fast you're going.
And instead of just saying happy, you could use ecstatic, joyful, or blissful to really capture how you're feeling.
Exactly. Choosing your words carefully can really add depth to your descriptions and make them more captivating for your listeners.
So it's not just about what we describe. It's about how we describe it. We need to find the words that really capture the essence of our ideal day and make it come alive for others.
Think of it like you're painting a picture with words. The more vibrant and detailed your brushstrokes are, the more beautiful the final painting will be.
I love that analogy. You know, we've been talking a lot about using descriptive language,
Yeah.
but I think it's worth mentioning that sometimes less is more.
Oh, that's a really important point. It's tempting to add in every detail, but sometimes a simple, well-crafted sentence can be just as effective as a long paragraph full of descriptions.
It's about finding that balance between giving enough information to engage your listener, but not so much that you overwhelm them.
Exactly. And finding that balance will depend on your personal style and the overall tone you want to create in your description.
So we need to trust our instincts as storytellers and let the words flow naturally.
Absolutely. And just like any skill, practice makes perfect. The more you experiment with different descriptive techniques, the more confident you'll become in expressing yourself.
Speaking of practice, I have a fun challenge for our listeners.
I love a challenge. Tell me more.
Imagine that you're describing your ideal day to someone who doesn't speak English. How would you get your message across using only gestures, facial expressions, and maybe a few basic English words?
What a great challenge. That would really force our listeners to think outside the box and communicate in new ways.
Yeah, it would make them rely more on nonverbal cues, which is a really important part of communication.
I love that idea. It's like a form of storytelling without using a full vocabulary.
And who knows, maybe you'll inspire our listeners to learn some sign language.
That would be fantastic. Communication is such an amazing thing. There's so many different ways to express ourselves and connect with others.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, let's go back to the idea that describing our ideal day can be a form of self-discovery.
It's a chance to really explore what's important to us and maybe even uncover some hidden desires or dreams that we haven't thought about before.
As our listeners are working on their ideal day descriptions, I want them to remember that it's more than just an English exercise. It's a chance to connect with themselves on a deeper level.
You said it perfectly, Mike.
Welcome back to the Learn English Lab for the final part of our deep dive into describing your ideal day.
We've talked about so much already, from descriptive language to that fun challenge of describing your day without speaking. Did you give it a try, listener? We'd love to hear about it.
But now it's time to put it all together and share some last tips for creating a truly amazing description of your perfect day.
I can't wait to hear what you've come up with, Mike.
Well, I think it's important to remember that describing your ideal day is more than just a list of things you would do. It's about telling a story that will draw your listener in and make them feel like they're right there with you.
That's so true. A good story can take us to different places, make us feel different emotions, and create memories that will last a lifetime.
Exactly. So how can we use those storytelling skills to make our ideal day descriptions even better?
Think of your day as a journey, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Start by setting the scene. Introduce yourself and anyone else who might be a part of your day.
Then build some excitement. Describe the activities that you do, the challenges you face, the happy moments you experience.
And to wrap it all up, talk about the overall feeling of the day and why it was so special.
It's like writing a mini novel about our perfect day. And speaking of novels, one way to get better at storytelling is to pay attention to how authors create those amazing scenes in their books.
Reading is such a great way to learn new techniques and get inspiration for our own writing.
Notice how they use dialogue, sensory details, figurative language. All of those things can help create a really immersive experience for the reader.
And don't be afraid to try out those techniques yourself.
So we've talked about storytelling, we've talked about descriptive language, but there's one more important piece of the puzzle: grammar.
Oh yes, grammar. The foundation of good writing. It's easy to get carried away with our creativity, but using correct grammar is essential for clear communication.
What are some of the most common grammar mistakes that our listeners should watch out for when they're describing their ideal day?
One common mistake is using the wrong verb tense. Since we're talking about a hypothetical situation, we need to use the conditional tense, which means using would plus the base form of the verb.
So instead of saying, I go to the beach,
Yeah.
we would say, I would go to the beach.
Exactly. And it's also important to make sure your subjects and verbs agree. For example, if you're talking about yourself and a friend, you would say, we would go to the beach. Not,
Hey.
we would goes to the beach.
Right. And don't forget about those articles. On a Carrick. They might seem small, but they make a big difference in how clear your sentences sound.
And prepositions too, and twillim, they can be tricky, but they're really important for talking about time and location.
Those are all great reminders, Sarah. And listeners, if you're not sure about a grammar rule, there are so many helpful resources available online and in libraries.
Don't be afraid to ask for help or do some extra research. The more effort you put into improving your grammar, the better your writing will be.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our deep dive into describing your ideal day. I hope you've learned a lot about descriptive language storytelling and grammar.
And most importantly, I hope we've inspired you to think about what truly makes you happy and to use your imagination to create a beautiful description of your perfect day.
There's no right or wrong answer. It's all about what brings you joy and peace.
So let your creativity flow and create something that truly represents your ideal day.
And don't forget to share your descriptions with us in the comments. We'd love to hear about your dream day adventures.
And before we say goodbye, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fun language lessons.
Until next time, keep dreaming, keep practicing, and keep those language skills shining. We'll see you soon for another deep dive. Bye for now.